Hey everyone, we're going to get started. We did go ahead and put in the chat there about introducing yourself. So I'm just real quickly going to introduce myself. I'm Christine with Sembrar. We'd love to hear who's joining us today. So if you want to just put in the chat, who you are and where you're joining us from, that would be great. I'm going to go ahead and let Brandon make introductions, and he and Jen will be joining you next. Thanks so much.
All right, good. Well, welcome. It's good to be with everyone today. Welcome everyone from LinkedIn. We appreciate you taking 30 minutes from your day to come and hear a great conversation with Jen Wulf. We're excited to introduce her, all of her experience, and really tell you about the great story that Jen has. Real quick, introduce myself. I'm Brandon Gardner, the founder and chief product manager at Sembrar. We're a fractional product management agency. We help product leaders who need a little bit more flexibility in bringing on expert senior product managers onto your team, which Jen Wulf is one of those. We call them our partner PMs. So we're excited to be here today for this 30 minutes to have this conversation with Jen. Quick introduction to Jen. Jen is a partner product manager for Sembrar. We've been working with Jen for several months, and she has such an incredible journey and story into fractional product management and everything she has learned about that journey. And we know many people are learning much more about what fractional product management is, how to get into it, and what it also means for product leaders. So we want to give you the opportunity to learn from someone who is in the trenches, who's doing it, and how they've gotten into that. So without further ado, Jen, do you want to give a quick introduction to yourself? And then we'll jump right into the conversation.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Brandon. Hi, I'm Jen Wulf. I'm so excited to be here and really learn from all of you as well. I'm still fairly new to fractional product management, so I think I'll bring that perspective, but I'm also really interested to hear about experiences, learnings, questions from folks who are on the call. So please do share those and please make this more of a discussion. I'd love to hear more. So quick introduction to me. Professionally, I've been in tech for the past decade, primarily managing products for companies like American Express, Lucid Software, Better Mortgage. I've worked on databases, integrations, infrastructure, component libraries, kind of more standard user interface. So a pretty wide variety of products, but I think the common thread is really I enjoy bigger systems type work that requires collaboration across the organization. In my personal life, I've been a pretty dedicated rock climber for the past 10 years. And in 2022, I took a year-long sabbatical so that I could build out a camper van and travel around the country climbing. Since then, I've begun working as both a fractional product manager and also getting certified as a rock guiding instructor through the American Mountain Guide Association. So it's been a wild journey.
And that is such a fun journey. Like I feel like I've missed part of it. So I love hearing that story, building out the van, going climbing. I love the mountains, but didn't quite get that far. So such a fun story. So let me start out with this, Jen. You've been in product management for quite many years now. Why did you decide to get into product management? What did you decide to do there?
Yeah, a little background noise. Okay, I think it's resolved. Product wasn't necessarily my first intention. Actually started off as a journalist, funny enough. But I was working at American Express in more of a marketing type role. And I kept getting feedback from our users because I was really interfacing with them a lot as part of that role. And it was really frustrating. There were so many ways in which the tool was either broken or wasn't really meeting their needs, or there were use cases that we didn't really understand that weren't really well supported by the tool. And I was talking with users at least on a weekly, if not daily basis, and capturing all of this information and relaying it back to our product team. And it kind of came out of a sense of frustration and wanting to fix these problems. And I'm sure a lot of other PMs can kind of relate to this, but I began working more and more with the product team, and eventually kind of found that I had kind of fallen into that role in some ways. And it was so empowering to learn this new discipline that gave me these tools and frameworks to really understand a problem, diagnose it, and start solving that problem for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of like a story, like many of us, we kind of fall into it at some point rather than choosing it. And then we realize what we're doing. So let's now skip forward to last year, 2022, and the story of you deciding to go on this sabbatical, which seems to be, somewhat of the start of this thought in your mind of starting Fractional at that point. So maybe you can take us back to that point. Where were you at? Why did you decide to do the sabbatical, and then we'll jump forward to then what did you decide to do after?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I had been dreaming about making climbing a bigger part of my life for years, or just being outside, really. But it seemed a little silly to me. It was hard to take it seriously. Climbing guides don't really make much money. I felt like I was too old and kind of like far in my career to take significant time off. So I kept trying to put it out of my mind. And this went on for years, but it just kept popping back up. And I think a big inflection point was really COVID. I saw so much disruption to my own life. We all did. And it kind of planted the seed of big changes are kind of inevitable. And you can kind of choose to wait for those changes to happen to you, or you can try to build a life that feels more true to you. And that is what I am working to do. Still, again, learning a lot, but yeah, it's been a really exciting journey.
Yeah.
I think as far as the sabbatical goes, I definitely hit a point where I was feeling a lot of burnout, and it seemed I kind of needed a change to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I talk with a lot of different product managers, product leaders of all types who are some are feeling the same way. They need some type of change. They want a career change, or they want to just do something different that kind of unlocks another part of their life, another part that might not be fulfilling. And it sounds like that was it for you, was that there was this part of your life that you didn't feel like was being completely fulfilled, and you wanted to pursue that more. So, you have this sabbatical and you go and do a lot of climbing. And what were your thoughts of getting back in? Like, maybe take us through now to where you decided, all right, I'm now ready to get back in and do more product management, or maybe just take us through that part of it and your journey of deciding to pursue maybe more fractional roles.
Yeah. Yeah, it was tough because I had this great career and I had really invested in this skill set and felt like I was good at it. But it wasn't fulfilling me in all the ways I needed it to. It wasn't giving me the flexibility that at that point really felt important to me, especially after taking that time off. So I wasn't quite ready to jump back into a full-time career, but I didn't want to let it go. So I was kind of looking for this middle ground between the two. And I think, as a lot of people on the call probably know, fractional product management is really an emerging space. So it's interesting. It's kind of like you're taking this period of self reinvention while the industry is also undergoing a similar process. So it was definitely a little intimidating getting started. And honestly, I consider myself very lucky to have connected with Sembrar pretty early in the process, and to have learned a lot from Brandon and Christine, and been able to take advantage of some opportunities there.
Yeah. So I think one of the questions that I regularly get is, was it easy to take this leap? You took the leap into the sabbatical. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's finances, there's healthcare, there's all these things. How did you deal with a lot of that uncertainty, and what advice do you have for others who are, maybe considering it or know that there's a lot of uncertainty? Maybe
Yeah.
you can put some light for us on there.
Yeah, I think that's really the heart of the matter, and I think you have to be really honest with yourself there. So I guess I'll start with the financial uncertainty, because while that's maybe in some ways the scariest, at least for me, it was fairly straightforward. So I was able to just kind of sit down, make a spreadsheet of my assets, my debts, my burn rate, kind of calculate my runway, and set some boundaries around how much money I needed to make, kind of how low I would let my savings go before I would find a more traditional job. And once I had those variables, it was pretty straightforward, to be honest. And again, I know that's going to be different for everyone. I happen to be very lucky, very fortunate in that respect, that that was a pretty straightforward process for me. But I think the much bigger piece for me was really the uncertainty around my identity,
Mm,
who I was. You're not having anyone manage your schedule, give you structure, give you goals, which is something that most PMs are pretty good at, right? Like we roadmap, we manage teams. But I think even more so than that is celebrating wins, maintaining boundaries. Like those things are really challenging, especially when you maybe have a bit of a perfectionist streak, because I think a lot of PMs do. I've seen so many colleagues in full time roles really struggle with setting boundaries. So imagine when you're just answering to
mm,
yourself. You've never done enough. So I think it's really difficult to kind of set those in place. And for me, I worked with a really fantastic business coach who walked me through a lot of those boundaries and also permissions. What are things that I am looking for in a career or in a role or in an opportunity? What are things that I won't negotiate on? What are things that would be nice, but I'm flexible on? And she really forced a lot of that conversation and reflection. And I actually wrote it all down. I have it all in like a deck that I can refer
mm.
to, and it was really helpful to kind of like set that vision for myself.
Yeah. So it sounds like, I think that's curious. More the finances was it's not that it wasn't something you had to work through, you had to work through it. But for you is that identity and maybe even some of the energy that you got from feeling like you were on this team and
Yes.
now you're having to you're motivating yourself. You're setting your own goals, your own timelines, and that's a little bit different type of motivation, or even like you're calling it identity that you're having to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that would be a good thing to reflect on as you're starting out. And something that I did reflect on a lot, and I still wasn't quite prepared for um, what it would really feel like to fully manage your own schedule, your own goals, to be pretty independent and not have a team to be able to rely on.
Yeah. So does that mean there's no more uncertainty? You figured it.
No.
I'll take that as a no.
No, yeah, and again, I'm still fairly early into my journey, so I think it's possible that that will kind of change and shift.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I do think in some ways that is kind of the nature of this path is you are engaging in either shorter or part-time roles, and there is kind of that element of always needing to plan and prepare for what's coming next.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so now you start to explore fractional. How was that exploration? You decided to go there. How was then once you decided to go there? How was your journey? What did you learn as when you started to make that dive into figuring that out? Just maybe tell us or tell the audience what you learned in that process and um, where you got to.
Yeah. So I think there have been a lot of differences and similarities between more of a consulting fractional role and traditional full time. I think the biggest difference has been kind of letting go of outcomes. I think as product managers, we are very used to owning a product from ideation to sunset. And that's not necessarily the case when you're in more of a consultant role. Um, so I think being able to really learn what your client's vision is and know that you might not be there for that whole life cycle. That has been a big growing experience for me. Um, and then in terms of things that are similar, influence and communication is so core to the product manager role, just generally. But I think even more so when you're coming in to an environment where you're expected to come up to speed very quickly. You might not have the standard onboarding process of a full-time hire. In fact, you probably won't. You won't have that same network. It becomes really important to be able to figure out who are my key stakeholders, who are my influencers, what are their goals, really quickly, and to be able to communicate back progress to them. Which again, part of the standard role, but I think even more pressure and expectation there.
Okay. So maybe just on the owning the outcomes, you're working towards an outcome because that's what the customer or the client that you're working with, the product leader you're working with, has an outcome. But how I kind of interpreted that was more of the outcomes of you like you have to separate yourself because like you said, you don't own it from beginning to end, and you're not going to be with us for maybe 2, 3, 4 years, but there's a small period of time you have a very specific place you're aiming towards. So maybe that separation, that was the difficult part for you.
Yeah, it's possible that in the time that you're there, the research that you do might point you in one direction, and your client might be pointing in a different direction.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard to let go of that. We kind of get used to being the
Mm.
experts of our domain. And I think there's still room to develop that expertise, but it's different. And you might lack some of the historical context and competitive landscape context and so on and so forth. So there is kind of this dance you need to do, I think, with stakeholders.
Great, great, great. What So this was a fun one. What do you see as the relationship between climbing and your work right now?
Yeah, I love this question. So climbing has been a really big part of my life and I think has really influenced who I am as a person and professionally. So last year, during my trip, I actually took a month to work with one of my personal heroes in climbing, this mentor, for a month. And there was so much I got out of that time. But I think two big things that really translated to this work were committing to uncertainty, which we've talked about a lot,
Mm.
and accepting risk. I think with committing to uncertainty, it's cool because climbing is like this really physical way to engage with fear and stress and uncertainty and kind of see how you react in those situations and then potentially change that.
Mm.
So with committing to uncertainty, you're literally, in some cases in climbing, going for a hold that might not hold, that might not be close enough. In some situations, you have to let go of this really nice stance that you have that makes you feel really comfortable. You have to fully let go of that and launch yourself at this next hold in order to give yourself the best opportunity of moving forward. So it's again this physical experience of letting go of certainty and jumping towards
Yeah,
where you want to go.
yeah,
And I think as part of that too, you might fall. Like that hold might not be as close as you thought, or it might not be as good as you thought. And so, really accepting risk. And I think something I worked on with that mentor was analyzing a climb from the ground and really thinking through fall consequences throughout the
mhm,
climb. If I fall here, is it okay? If I fall here, am I going to hurt my ankle, hit a ledge? And deciding whether or not you want to take on that risk.
Mhm.
And if you do, accepting the outcomes and being able to commit fully, but also knowing it's okay to walk away.
Yeah.
If it doesn't seem like something that's kind of within your capacity at that time on that day, being really thoughtful about what risk you're willing to take on.
Yeah. 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 We've talked a lot about the challenges, and some of the uncertainties, but what would you say are the benefits you've run into as you've pursued this journey? What has it unlocked for you?
Yeah. I mean, it's this two-sided coin. So the flip side of uncertainty is freedom, is autonomy. And this year, really the past year and a half, I have been able to pursue so many of my goals, so many of my dreams, working towards this certification, getting on some routes I've been really excited about, going to new areas that I've always wanted to see. Um, so it's been pretty incredible. I've looked at my New Year's resolution list from like a year or two ago, and I'm just ticking them off,
Yeah.
which doesn't happen for me. I make them every year and I never look at them again.
Yeah.
So I've really had that flexibility to pursue some things that are yeah, really important to me personally,
Mm.
in addition to professionally. So yeah, it's been pretty wild to have that ability.
Yeah. 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 I'd love to go into what advice, we're getting to more the latter part of this discussion. What advice do you have to others that are pursuing the space, want to go after it? What would you tell them? What are maybe two or three things, if you have two or three things right now, but what are some of the things you'd tell them, and advice you might give them as they pursue and go on this journey?
Yeah. I think building a network for yourself is really important.
Mm.
And I think I've done okay at that, but it's somewhere that I want to keep investing. I had a few really great mentors from the beginning, but there's so much that you won't think of. And there's so much where you'll feel like you're crazy or you're spinning your wheels. So really finding those people that you can rely on. And for business advice, for personal support, figuring out who that network is and getting them in place as you're starting this journey. And like we keep saying, be honest about how you deal with uncertainty. Have you been in a position before where you've maybe had a little more white space in your life? What did that feel like? Was that a good experience? Was it difficult? What made it difficult? What could make it more easy? Um, yeah, I think there's a lot of obvious pros, but it can be really challenging. Um, yeah, and doing whatever you can, same as we always do with products. What are the risks and how do we mitigate those? So going through and thinking about what those big hurdles would be for you and what you could do for yourself personally to feel better about them.
Yeah. 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 Well, that's really great. What as you have gone through this journey yourself, like what have you personally taken out of it? You've talked a lot about the uncertainty and such, but maybe what have you taken out of it? Has it been empowering? Has it been, there's been obviously fear. There's been a lot that's been wrapped up into it, but what have you personally really learned from the past, 18 months to 2 years, as you've gotten to this point of now working, you're working as a fractional product manager. What have you learned, and what would you hope that others would learn?
Yeah. I think it's still a little surreal to me that it's all kind of humming along. And I think back on a couple years ago, I have all these kind of sketches and notebooks of what my life might look like, and it's happening.
Yeah.
And it's kind of surprising. Because at the time when I was kind of planning and sketching, it seemed so impossible, so far off. And I think it really just does take that commitment to figuring it out, to being uncomfortable.